once this video goes live and people will probably start discussions and like a heated debate, we would love for you to follow that conversation and report back to us what your findings are.
Final Fantasy XIV friends. Thanks for tuning in to the Jesse Cox Dawntrail Spectacular. I and many other great folks in the Final Fantasy XIV community got to experience the newest expansion a little bit early on the media tour, and I'm here to share with you everything I learned, some things I don't understand, and a mystery or two that I cannot wait to deep dive into once the game is out. Also, I got to interview Naoki Yoshida, producer, director, the man of Final Fantasy XIV, and let me tell you, I definitely 100% used that time wisely. Now, if you're wondering, Jesse, why are we looking at little JC in different level 100 gear? Well, it's because I didn't really know where to put it, and I only have 45 minutes total that I'm allowed to show you, and someone has to represent the short kings and queens in 14. It's a Lala world, y'all. You just playing in it. But it's also a great way to show off some of the new graphical elements in the game, especially the way fabric looks. Obviously, this isn't Jesse recording at home quality, but it's good enough to notice the way each piece of cloth has this sort of different look and feel and texture. Some of it looks silky, some of it felty, some of it leathery, in ways it really never has before. And I noticed that instantly. Pay attention to the detail on your favorite job as it shows up. I was blown away by that. And I think everyone noticed at the Fan Fest and in the live letters and all the different things we've seen since, the medals as well, the buckles and the different hooks and things. You'll notice on almost all of these job outfits that they included little tiny metal trinkets everywhere. They're definitely trying to show off the new graphics. Also, speaking of new and flashy, the music you're listening to right now is from Dawntrail, and the music montage from the beginning was as well. When I first arrived at the event, I was the first person there because I'm that nerd. And when I walked in, some of the team were there and we started talking about the music that was playing in the venue. Because it was blasting some horn-heavy Zoot Suit number that I was thinking, this is a weird vibe for a media event, but like, I dig it. And then suddenly, I heard the Dawntrail motif and I asked them, is this from the game? And of course, they do that coy thing where they're like, We don't know. So when we got a chance to sit down and play and we loaded into the world, the first thing I heard was that song and immediately was like, yeah, this is gonna be fun. And honestly, that's my big takeaway from the entire event. Everything I got to play, the whole experience was, this expansion is the Dawn. They want it to be light, they want it to be fun, they want to start a brand new adventure. We literally came out of Existential Dread the expansion, facing mortality and existence, and coming out the other side. Even the toughest guy shed a tear or two, and that was awesome because you know the emotional vampire in me was eating that up. But according to Yoshi-P, as I was saying, it's time to get away from all that stuff for a little bit. The real world is a mess right now, and I'm pretty sure the devs were like, we want to bring a little joy to people, and that's what this expansion's going for. It is Final Fantasy, so I'm sure we're in for some kind of twist at the end, but for now, the experience they want to bring across in this is an adventure, something to make you really excited about playing Final Fantasy XIV again, and the start of what could potentially be a new story arc. And if you're like, whoa, what do you mean potentially? Well, that was a question that was brought up when there was a group Q&A at the media event. And thankfully, I was in a group with not only just people who were really into the mechanics of the game, which, by the way, I am not. Go watch the hundreds of other videos from people who really know the mechanics, who are really gonna deep dive and nail that. There are many, and they deserve your views. But thankfully, there were some lore and story people there with me, and we had a lot of questions about where this was all going and what they were looking forward to doing. And the thing they reminded us of is that when they started making Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, they didn't have a 10-year story arc in their mind. They had A Realm Reborn, and then they had Heavensward, and then they had Stormblood, and they left all these threads there that they could pull on, which they did in Shadowbringers and then Endwalker. We look back and we see a 10-year story arc, but that's not how it started, and that's not how this is starting. Though, going back to the old Final Fantasy twist that I mentioned, Yoshi-P did specifically say that whatever happens at the end of this, based on the reaction of the fan base, that's going to determine the direction they go forward into future expansions. I don't particularly know what that means in regards to the end of Dawntrail, but I have a feeling our summer vacation's gonna get real weird, and honestly, I'm hoping for weird. I don't want some new, terrible, big bad yet. I want a mystery. I want something we're gonna be spending the rest of the year like, what the hell is going on? What is this? I want that, and there are some things that are a mystery in this game that we'll get to later. If you're curious about the media tour and what we had access to, I can give you a little rundown. We had a bunch of computers, a bunch of chairs, we all sat in it and drank mocktails and ate chicken and plantains and empanadas, you name it. I watched people just gorge on nachos. It was great. It was a good time. Game-wise, which I'm sure you care way more about, obviously all the jobs and the different major changes to Ninja, Monk, Dragoon, Astrologian, and Black Mage. Let me stress again, I do not play any of those jobs with any ounce of skill. I just leveled them up to max level and move on with my life. So please go watch many of the other videos that are out there that I guarantee will deep dive into those and what's different. Give them views, let them know that Jesse sent you. We got to mess with the new die system, which I'll include some of that here in a sec. And then we got to explore some of Tyrol, including the main town we're in right now, Tuliolalo? Boy, I don't know how to say that. For the life of me, I don't know why they decided to make these names Rogan and plus hard, but here we are. We also got to explore the Amazon-style zone, Kazama-uka, however you would say that. And then Urkapacha, or Yorkapacha, which is basically Fantasy Peru, from what I can tell. There's a Machu Picchu-like area in the zone video that I showed you earlier. That's from this. And while the first zone contained the one dungeon we did get to run, Ihui Katumu? I told you, I'm gonna have a hard time with this. The second zone, the one with the mountains and Machu Picchu, was the one I spent most of my time in. It was certainly interesting, and yes, I'm going to keep teasing that because there's some cool stuff there. And we will, you guessed it, get to that later. As for the characters and NPCs and major story beats, aside from the dungeon, I really got nothing but speculation for you. They straight up removed all the dialogue from the game, and either you got an NPC saying, "Welcome to Dawntrail," or Final Fantasy VIII Squall, ... There was also no visible gear to look at in item slots to see stats or whatever. It was just little packages, and the Disciples of Land and Hand weren't even available. So, don't get too jelly about me getting a chance to play early. Everything I saw, you're about to see. Speaking of seeing, so many of these armor sets have eye patches. Have you noticed that? I really wanted a Corsair job, and I don't know if we're gonna get one, but they certainly went with pirate cosplay will do. I guess if there was one thing I really wanted to stress to you is that there was just so much to look at. They crammed lots of great little vignettes of NPCs around the world, great use of the new graphic system with a lot of foliage and different water flowing, light shining angles, and it was beautiful. Not to mention the Mesoamerican art, and even though I didn't get a picture of it, because, maybe I forgot to record, some of those stone carvings are awesome. They give big Warhammer Lizardmen vibes. I'm telling you, there was a carving actually really near to where this is being recorded that looked like a bunch of skinks chatting it up with Mazamundi, who is basically a giant magic frog. It was wild looking. I loved it. You'll have to find it when you have a chance to play. Speaking of playing, another question that was brought up to the group was about the more single-player nature of Final Fantasy XIV and how some people felt that Shadowbringers and Endwalker leaned a little too heavy into the single-player experience. Yoshida responded by saying that the biggest problem with MMORPGs is the barrier of entry. People are afraid to play with others. Maybe it's because some other MMORPGs are DPS meter toxic fests and the vibe is totally different from Final Fantasy XIV, who knows, but interacting with others is sometimes daunting. So he said the team wanted to make it so you can play by yourself and slowly over time ingratiate with the community in the game and play with other players eventually. They believe they've done this and that now they're going to start focusing on multiplayer activities. I don't know what the timetable is on this. I assume we'll start seeing a lot of that in the 7.1, 7.2, that kind of thing. But they said that's the plan, and I'm pretty excited for that. I guess what I'm trying to say is this expansion seems packed full of potential greatness. And while I have no real knowledge of how we'll feel come August, I have a firm belief that if any team can knock it out of the park, it's good old Creative Business Unit 3. And since I did promise you some glam shots, here's some of the new dye system. Obviously, I didn't spend a lot of time deep diving this as some of the other people at the event did. Again, go watch the amazing creators who are out there who definitely spent more hours on this, and I'm talking hours. There were some people who this was half their day just messing with the dye system. Me, all I really wanted to do was, one, create the Assassino, which I feel like I did, and then mess around with some of the cool colors here, and then just see how easy it was to use. And spoiler, it's pretty easy. It's exactly how you think you'd use it. And two, I wanted to create a Realm outfit from the best game ever made, Final Fantasy VI, which, now that I think about it, I really hope the job quest for Picto involves drawing Ultros, because that would be hilarious. Anyway, as you can see, I tried to mess around with it, and then I realized in-game Realm colors and Amino Realm colors are different, so I just wanted to see if I could pull off both, and I think I did. It was fun, but I definitely had other things to do that day. And now, questions with Yoshi-P.
You said today, and you said in previous live letters and at FanFest, that the player base has grown dramatically in the last 10 years. And as more players try out the game for the first time and try to experience Final Fantasy XIV and try to catch up to their friends who are already playing, there's a pretty big barrier of entry to get through 500 plus hours of a game, or to get through the overwhelming opening in order to get to their friends. What advice would you have for them? Or what kind of suggestions? Or maybe what you and the team are doing to make that easier?
そうですね。なんかすごくそこは悩ましいと僕自身も思っていて、ただやっぱりファイナルファンタジー14のここまでの成長、まあ JC さんもそうですけど、やっぱりストーリーを体験して、まあいろんなその衝撃だったり、まあ時にはこう涙をしてくれたりっていうところを僕もよく動画で拝見しているので、その体験あってのストーリー体験あっての14だっていう思いは僕自身すごくこだわってきたからこそまず強いです。
It is definitely difficult to address here because it is thanks to the story that Final Fantasy XIV has grown to such a large audience. And I believe, Jesse, you too, you've experienced the different elements throughout the narrative, sometimes that are shocking, sometimes that are emotional, and we've seen your reaction videos as well. So, there is, we are very particular about the story that we conveyed through Final Fantasy XIV.
僕、ちょっと余談ですけど覚えてるのがシャドウブリンガーズをクリアした時のビデオで大きくこううなずきながらエンドクレジット流れた時に拍手をしてくれてるんですよ。で本当に作ってきてよかったなって思っていて、やっぱり感動とかそのストーリー体験っていうのを味わってもらいたいっていう思いがまだ僕の中には結構強い。
And kind of going off tangent, but we remember a video that you've done once you finished Shadowbreakers and the end credits were rolling and you were nodding like really big and just clapping, and we remembered that, and it warmed our hearts though. Yoshida felt that it was really worth making a story up to this point. So there are elements where we still want the players to go through and experience some of those moving moments in the story, and that feeling still remains rather strong.
でも、ハイデリン・ゾディアーク編がエンドウォーカーで一回完結したので、実は 6.1 から6.0 までを全てスキップして 6.1 から新しいプレイヤーが始められるための仕組みっていうのは実は用意はしていて、あとは僕がゴーサインを出すかどうかだけっていうところまで準備はしてました今回。
That said, of course, we just concluded a 10-year saga with the Hydaelyn Zodiac saga, and the team was making preparations on having a system where players can skip all the way to patch 6.1 and just not have to go up to the story through 6.0, so that new players wouldn't have to worry about going through such a large amount of content. And the team was just waiting for whether or not Yoshida would give the green light.
ただ結果的には今回もゴーサインは出さずに、今まで通りにしたのはやっぱり世界中たくさんの皆さんが14のストーリーはいいよ、ストーリー以外からやってみてほしいって言ってくださってるのをもう少し続けてもいいかなって思ったところが大きくて、やっぱりストーリーあっての14だし、でもだからこそその新しく始めるプレイヤーの皆さんに言いたいのは、レベルキャップだけとかだったらいつでも追いつけるゲームデザインになってるので、追いつこうっていう心理で遊ぶんじゃなくて、ドラマを見てる感覚でストーリーをまず楽しんでもらえれば気がついたら追いついてるよ、だから焦らないでっていう話をまだ今はさせてもらうのでいいかなって思ってたりします。
But as you can see, Yoshida has not given the green light for a system like that, and we are going to maintain what we have been doing up to this point, because there's just so many people who have thought highly of the story of Final Fantasy XIV around the world, and so many people have thankfully recommended their friends to try out Final Fantasy XIV because of the story. So Yoshida feels that, well, I think we can still kind of maintain that for now. And 14 is what it is because of its robust story. So for new players, I think the suggestion would probably be, we understand that the level cap is 100 and it may seem like a lot, but don't think of it as like, oh, I need to catch up right now. Like, you can go at your own pace. If you follow along the main line of the story, your level will go up naturally, and by the time you get through most of the story, your level will have already caught up. So kind of like you're watching a drama or something, like just take it at your own pace.
ただ最後に言っとくけど、毎回悩んではいる。
But I do want to emphasize one last time that every time it is a struggle whether or not we allow for that.
All right, let's talk jobs. On the screen right now is Viper, and while I thought Pictomancer was going to be the one I clicked with, Viper's the one that got me, but it's deceptive. As you can see on the screen right now, I'm highlighting some buffs that you can get. There are 4 rotations, 2 being AoE, 2 being single target. But for simplicity's sake, because that's where I'm at mentally, Hunter's Instinct is an enhancement that increases your damage, and Swift Scaled increases your speed. You also have an enfeeblement called Noxious Gash, which increases damage dealt to the enfeebled monster. The good news is, if you just stick to your basic single target combos, in this case my buttons 1 and 2, you're gonna get all 3 up in no time, and you will continue to keep them up if you just keep doing that. The part that I didn't really understand was you have 4 combos, and then your super freak out reawaken combo. And I mean, obviously, when you fill your gauge, use reawaken, right? That seems simple. But I didn't really understand the optimal order for different combos, let alone what your best opener was. It was pretty confusing for me. I'm just gonna end up watching a video from someone who actually understands it. But to be honest, I don't think most players care about playing optimally. In fact, you're doing so much and attacking so quickly with Viper that I don't think anyone's even gonna notice. I loved the fact that if you just press the buttons, it looks like you're doing something cool the entire time. Downtime seemed negligible, and it feels fast, it plays fast, it looks cool as hell, and I get the feeling that that's really what most people care about. Is it fun, you know? I mean, just look at this thing. It looks awesome. It looks awesome, and Lalafell looks even funnier, so definitely a job I'm going to play. I absolutely love it. Also, for those of you who are curious to see what a Lalafell looks like with the limit breaks, here you go. Okay, let's talk Pictomancer. I think this is actually explained really well by Yoshida and team during the live letter. For simplicity's sake, I tried to make my layout similar to his in the video, just, you know, easier for me to understand. You've got your 3 canvases, in my case, from left to right, weapon, creature, and landscape. Now, upon looking at the footage, I realized that actually the canvases are creature, weapon, landscape. Look, it seemed simpler at the time. Anyway, using creature will create parts for your creature that you can then unleash on the enemy. Weapon will give you a bunch of melee hammer attacks, and landscape will give you access to a party-wide damage buff to anyone in it. The landscape also triggers the Rainbow Bright enhancement, which allows you to cast Rainbow Drip, that sort of line of rainbows and flowers spell, instantly. At least I think that's what triggers it. I feel like that's what triggers it. I'll be honest, I don't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure that's what it does. But that's not all. You got a whole other set of things to do besides paint on the canvas. Starting at my button number 4, you've got Ether Hue attacks, which are the single target Fire in Red or the AoE Fire 2 in Red, that then become Arrow and then become Water. When you execute all 3 in order, you'll get some palette gauge with white paint. And you can use that white paint to execute Holy in White, or you can turn the paint black, which will then allow you to use Blizzard and Cyan, or Blizzard 2 for AoE, Stone, and then Thunder, ending with Comet in black. The thing to me of interest in this moment was trying to figure out exactly what spells you had to stand still to cast and what spells you kind of run around with. The hammer, for example, being one that you can run around with and just attack and keep pressing the button, and it looks pretty fun. But Fire in Red, for example, you had to stand still. And that's kind of one of the issues I had with the job, is it has the components of Red Mage and the components of Black Mage, in that it seems fast in some places, but then slower in others, and I do not respond well to Black Mage at all. It's just one of those things that I've never clicked with, and I know many people who say Black Mage is awesome, Jesse, you're stupid, and that's fine, it's all preference anyway. But coming off of Viper, it felt pretty slow. The biggest question I have for those who are going to deep dive this one, when do I choose to use canvas abilities versus my normal white and black magic attacks? If I'm in the middle of combat, it seems like canvas slows everything down. So is it just an opener? What do I do there? Because sometimes I was just like, it's so much easier just to cast spells than to wait for the whole painting thing. I guess I'll end up watching a video or 2 on this, but that's my thoughts on the 2 jobs. And now, important questions with Yoshi-P.
Final Fantasy XIV is known for some really interesting rain mechanics and some very fun boss fights that are more of a dance than actual combat. Moving around, avoiding various mechanics. And I saw on Twitter that Soken had commented that the video game Alan Wake 2 had a very good fight music number. What is the chance that we will one day see a full-on dance battle in Final Fantasy XIV?
どうなんだろうな、ダンスに限らないんですけど、ちょっと最近、僕、チームにも話してるし、最近プレイヤーの皆さんにもよりエキサイトメントを高めていきたいっていう話をしてると思うんですけど、ダンスバトルかどうかはちょっと置いておいて、とはいえ最近ちょっとギミックがどっかで見たものだったり、何かを応用したものがちょっと多いなって感じてるので、改めていろんなアイデア、いろんなチャレンジをバトルメカニクスに入れていきたい、コンテンツメカニクスに入れていきたいって思いは今すごく強いです。
And it might not necessarily be limited to dancing and whatnot, but we do want to deliver more excitement for the players whenever they do battle content, encounter content. So I don't know if it'll necessarily be a dance battle per se, but we have seen as of late many battle encounters where the mechanics seem very similar from one another, so we want to change that up a little bit. We want to look at how we approach battle mechanics, say bringing in more unique ideas to our content. So.
その中にでもさすがに怒られるのかな、なんか特定のエモートをしないとその解除できないデバフとかでも怒られるのかなやっぱ。
I might get yelled at for saying this, but like for example, maybe like during a battle you'd have to perform a certain emote in order to be freed for some kind of tether or something.
だってさ、バトルの最中にさ、紳士の前をやらなきゃダメだって言われたら、そんなもん持ってねえよみたいな人がねいたらクリアできないしね。
Like say, well, you have to perform the gentleman's dance during a battle. Like, what if you haven't obtained that emote yet? You know, people might not like that.
いやでもそれぐらい一回もっと開発チームはこれまでの経験を生かすっていうところはもちろんなんだけど、もっともっと自由でもっともっと面白いメカニクス、ギミックっていうのをチャレンジしていこうぜ。時にはそのやりすぎてプレイヤーの皆さんが怒られることがあるかもしれないけど、よりもっと我々がプレイヤーの皆さんが想像つかないようなバトルメカニクスやコンテンツっていうのを作っていくことが結局はプレイヤーの皆さんが楽しむ要素になっていくと思うし、工夫する余地にもなってくると思うから、そこはもっと自由に行こうぜって話をしてるから、いろいろ変えていきたいところではあります。
But that said, Yoshida has been talking with the development team to encourage them to bring in new ideas and try to introduce fun or interesting mechanics where the players will have to do a little bit of thinking and trying to figure out how to sort of process the mechanics that are thrown at them. And we may make something that is a little too unusual that players might not like it, but I think we want to go back and try to introduce mechanics that players might not expect, or have them try to discuss one amongst the party members to see what they can do to figure out the mechanics, to enjoy the different battle content so that it's not just the mundane. Yoshida also wants to encourage the developers to make sure that they are free to create something interesting. And so the desire definitely is strong to bring something new and refreshing to our players.
その中でダンスバトルのアイデアが出てきたら実装されるかもしれないし、ただその時に一番なんていうんだろう、ショックを受けるのはコミュニティチームなんじゃないかと思うんですよ。
And say, for example, one of the developers did come up with an idea that seems to look like a dance battle, and we might try to implement something like that. I think that people who might be shocked to see something like that might be the community team.
なぜかというと、ファンフェスのステージでソケンから このダンスバトルコミュニティチームでやってよってあいつ無茶を言い出しそうな気がするから。
The reason is Soken might take a look at that sort of dance battle and tell the community team that, next FanFest, you guys are gonna do that on stage.
もうマットこうなって
Oh, no, Matt's hyped.
Speaking of fight mechanics and things, we also got to run the first dungeon, like I mentioned earlier. And even though I had every opportunity to play with other people at the event, I really wanted to do the duty version with our favorite characters. You know, for the lore. While I have no real information about our motivations for being here, we are clearly in a race with our Malmuja competition and what I assume relates to everyone vying for the throne in this expansion. But we'll get more into that in a minute. I ran this twice, once as a Viper, once as a Picto, and I enjoyed Viper a whole lot more, and so we're gonna use that footage mostly. Also, Kryle's a Picto, and it was hard for me video-wise to tell what I was casting versus what she was casting, because effects were going off everywhere, and that's how I'm justifying me using Viper. You're also joined by, besides Kryle, Alphano and Waklamat. Although I suppose Alice could be on your team, but I checked before coming in and it only let me pick these three. So maybe it's a DPS thing if I tried something different? No clue. Anyway, I'm gonna jump around a lot in here, mostly for time reasons. Also, spoilers for this dungeon. If it's not your vibe, skip ahead to the next timestamp for the interview. But we start here with the old moving platform where enemies come to you, and that's a thing 14's been doing a lot since Endwalker, and I love it. No complaints here. Super fun. The result is a clash with the other boat at the end. Forcing us to have to walk right into the first boss. Look at this big boy. I love him so much. For a first dungeon, first boss fight, it's fairly simple. He really just plops around a lot, except for this one ability where he sucks in everything and then spits it out. And now you have to dodge trees and debris, and the whole ground is yellow, and you're running around like a crazy person. It's a dick move, but it's really cool looking. Oh look, they brought their whole family. That's fun, babies. The mechanic here, it took me a minute to figure out, as you can see, but basically, it's gonna plop down on you, and I feel like the best strat here is to run directly under the one that's targeting you, so it just jumps straight up and then straight down, and if they're in all four corners, it should be easy to avoid hitting other people. As you continue on, you move further into the jungle, into some caves, using more of the ladder mechanics that they keep introducing. I think that's kind of cute, little ladder climbing scene. But it's up here at the top that we get our first big story moment, and a clue of what exactly is going on here, because you aren't just racing Team Malmuja, you're also racing Team Dad. I think that's really neat because it means that by Dungeon 1, we're already well into the teams are divided. And everyone has their own motivations for what they're doing, and I have no idea what those are. Very eager to find out. But also up here, I really like these slimes. They turn in to your party, and at first I was like, oh, they're color-coded to the different types of jobs you can be, either DPS or tank or healer, except blue were Kryle and we're DPS, so I don't know. Maybe the slimes are just stupid. They ain't got no brains, the slimes. Boss number 2 is Drowsy, and if Drowsy isn't a mount by the end of this, I'm gonna be so upset. However, Drowsy's much cuter than they are dangerous because ability-wise, pretty limited. Summons tendrils, then a group of slimes, and then a few cone attacks, but that's really it. It was a pretty easy fight. I mean, it's a beautiful fight in a beautiful room, but not particularly hard. The final boss of the dungeon is Apollyon, which I don't really know if it's a reference to another enemy in Final Fantasy lore, but there is definitely a zone or area in Final Fantasy XI called that. Let me know in the comments. This one I don't really want to spoil too much, but just to give you the rundown, as the fight goes on, different animals that this thing's been feasting on will jump out and try to get revenge. Then Apollyon will attack them and feast on their bodies. I'm not sure if there's a way to stop this, but when it kills them, Apollyon's attacks become strengthened, in this case, wing beats. And then the next one here strengthens its scything forearms. The fight pretty much goes on like this, with each new strength giving it a series of attacks before something else jumps in and takes advantage of the fight. I don't want to spoil too much of it, and definitely not the ending, but it's fun. Overall, compared to the Tower of Zot in Endwalker, which was the first dungeon there, where I watched a lot of people die, I think this dungeon's difficulty is significantly less than that one. That's really all I wanted to share about the dungeon with the time that we had. I enjoyed it, and hopefully you will too. And now, extremely important questions with Yoshi-P.
Hello, Yoshida-san.
hello.
It's me, Ben Starr, your best friend and sometime employee. Now, I've got a very important question. From me, from Jesse, from everyone in the Final Fantasy community. Now, 2 years ago, Jesse asked you when Lala Fells will be able to ride other players like mounts. I see no evidence of this, sir. Boss. When and how are you going to finally correct this injustice? Lala Fells deserve to ride other people like mounts. Imagine them. Make it happen, boss. Make it happen for me.
I see. ララフェルがね、他の種族にね、プレイヤーにマウントするっていうやつね。まあ、グラフィックスアップデートしたからいけるかもしれんね。
Well, we have started our graphics update, so could we see potential based on that?
でもその場合にはもう一個多分考えなきゃいけないのが、キャラクターオプションの中にララフェルが乗ってもいいかどうかっていうチェックボックスが必要だよね。俺の背中にはララフェルは乗るなっていうチェックボックスも作んないと。
But we also have to think about consent. So will we have to add a checkbox for character creation screen? I will consent to having a Lalafell ride on my back or not.
だってそうじゃないとね、もうこういうもうララフェルいつも乗ってきてうざいってなる
We
から。
don't want to have random players being bothered by Lalafell suddenly mounting them.
それかトレードシステムのようにララフェルが乗っても乗りたいって言ってますいいですかみたいな。
Or maybe we'll have it set up like the trade system. We'll have a dialogue that pops up that says, Lalafell wants to ride that, yes or no?
まあでもここまでヒントを出せば開発チーム本気で考えるかもしれないからな。
That's it. I think by us talking about it and providing them with hints, that might spur our developers to come up with solutions.
一つお願いがあって、
But there is one thing we want to request.
このジェシーのビデオが流れたら 世界中でララフェルが乗るのはありかなしかっていう議論がめっちゃ起こると思うので、そのコミュニティのフィードバックはちゃんと見ておいてね。
So once this video goes live, and people will probably start discussions on Lala as mounting other characters, yes or no, and like a heated debate. We would love for you to follow that conversation and report back to us what your findings are.
Oh, I will.
Now comes the part that I was hinting at a little bit ago, and I've been waiting for 40 minutes to talk to you about. With the time we had remaining, I wanted to talk about my exploration and the things I discovered that were of interest. And to me, what I think is interesting are potentially huge world building and lore hints. While flying around and exploring the 2 zones we had access to, specifically Urkapacha or Urkapacha, I noticed 2 interesting details. One, this incredibly obvious giant molten gash in the world, these 3 claw-like rips in the cliffside. I'm gonna slow down the footage here because at first I thought, yeah, okay, some sort of like maybe dragon claw mark. But then I noticed the angle, and it clearly hits the outer cliffs first, then the one behind, which to me seems more like some sort of ranged attack or like Mega Alta Slice or something. Could it be from this guy, the Eliminator? I don't know. I have no answers. Just put it out there to you. Maybe you'll come up with something cooler than me. But that's the oh neat kind of world building. I am expecting next level theory crafting from all of you on this. I found it in a nearby cave. I was trying to get into a beautiful valley, and this was the entrance, and within it, dare I say, was some Emmett Selk reveal energy. As you can see from this first carving, there's some figure lighting the way or guiding some race that I'm not really sure of, but they look like orcs from Final Fantasy XI. I tried to get closer to get some more detail, but the more I zoomed in, the more pixelated it became, and this is as close as I could get to at least leave it somewhat readable. The next carving seems more water-themed, or at least bluer, with the figure in the middle who kinda looks like Kenicha Hao? It's the Mayan deity of the sun. I'm no expert, but I have been to Chichen Itza and that was pretty cool, so I'm guessing that's either a platform in the middle or a boat or something, and those are gates in the background, I guess. Honestly, no clue. Then we have this interesting looking image with a bearded figure overlooking a massive tower structure or city while giant birds surround him, and then there are 2 eyes crying tears on the people below. So that's the thing. And this last one appears to just be a very happy sun shining down on a city that's on a mountain with lizards. Maybe this is the birth of our new main city? If anything, it just looks like a Mario level to me, but I have no clue what any of these are. I feel like the big takeaway from this is that they are in some way linked to the origins of the New World. And going back to something Yoshida said during the group interview, he was asked what are some quests or raids or dungeons that could prepare us for this expansion story-wise. And after he let out a very long, you can see the gears sort of turning in his head. He said 2 things. 1, do Myths of the Realm, the new Alliance raid series from Endwalker. And 2, do you remember all of the names of the Convocation of 14? And that was it. It was cryptic enough to really mean anything, but it got everyone in the room being like, what the hell does that mean? And I kept thinking, because could these major figures in this art be the 12 at work in the New World? Is that dude with the giant hammer Bayergot? Could any of these other figures be other members of the 12? Or is this some form of members of the Convocation, right? Like maybe this city that kind of has a pseudo Solution 9 vibe to it that I am really stretching for right now. Maybe that's something. Honestly, I don't know. It could be a mix of both. Who knows? I have no clue. That's what he told us, and now I'm obsessed with those 2 things, and I can't wait to figure out in what way he thought they associated. It's definitely going to be something on my mind as the expansion draws nearer, which, by the way, is June 28th for the pre-order players. And that's me. I cannot wait. I got my earring. It's actually totally useless when everything's level 90, but I don't care. I'm excited to see where this goes and what our characters get up to. I'm excited to share it all with you. So thank you to the Final Fantasy XIV team for letting me play a bit early, and thank you for watching. It's awesome that you made it this far in, and thank you for sticking around for my weird theories and crazy questions. Here's hoping the next couple weeks go by very quickly, and I will see you in the new world.